Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a couple of flavored Imperial Stouts, and they both sound awesome, completely different, but they both sound awesome, and I honestly cannot wait to jump into these. We're going to be starting with 903 Brewers Sasquatch. This is an Imperial Milk Stout, clocks in at 9.8% ABV, and this one's been brewed with double chocolate and marshmallow. And then beer number 2 is from the Bruery. This is called Bakery Banana Bread. It's an Imperial Stout, clocks in at 10.2% ABV. This one is a blended stout that was bourbon barrel aged and brewed with bananas and walnuts. So both distinctly different avenues, one a milk stout, one not. Very close ABVs, both flavored, and they both sound fantastic. So we're going to be starting today with the 903 Brewers Sasquatch, the Imperial Milk Stout out of the bunch. And this one clocks in at 9.8% ABV. Okay, so jumping right in with the first beer of today's Imperial Stout review, we've got 903 Brewers Sasquatch. This is an Imperial Milk Stout brewed with double chocolate and marshmallows, clocks in at 9.8% ABV, and they are based in Sherman, Texas. We've done quite a few beers from 903, and I have enjoyed all of them immensely. I had heard about this beer, was keeping my eyes out, and finally snagged a can. So we're going to jump in and see what this one's about. So first thing first, as always, they have interesting can art on theirs. It's got kind of a Sasquatch, looks like throwing a party, maybe his birthday or something. But that's their can art on this one. So we're going to get this bad boy cracked and poured right in the old stout glass here. All right. Yep, that looks very dark, and it seems to have a decent bit of resistance, a decent bit of thickness as I'm pouring this. Unsurprisingly, Milk Stout 9.8, and it formed an absolutely lovely head. Yeah, we'll get the whole thing in there. We'll get the whole thing in there. Beautiful. All right, so visually, this is absolutely pitch black. It is very effervescent, as you could probably guess just by how really thick of a head it formed there, but I can see tons of carbonation sticking all over the sides of the glass. It's very tight, very fine carbonation, which is probably one of the reasons this head looks so creamy and lush on top. Now, I'm positive that it would be even more so off of a tap at a bar, but for port at home, this looks great. Let's get over here and give this a sniff. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That smells really, really good. You can smell that slight sweetness, and it's very, very chocolate dominant. And while the chocolate is very dominant, you can absolutely still smell the malt bill underneath. And almost with the marshmallow and the chocolate, the malt bill is putting off this almost graham cracker-like aroma. So it smells like liquid s'mores. It's exactly what it smells like in this glass. Yeah, it really does. It smells absolutely fantastic. Very, very pungent aromas. Head settled down a bit there, but it's holding true, so let's go ahead and dive right in. Oh, that's very nice. Oh, wow. They're not kidding about double chocolate. That is very, very chocolate intense. Very chocolate intense. The marshmallow pairs with the lactose, the milk stout side of the beer. And that's really where the marshmallow is really coming through, that flavor profile, but it's very chocolate dominant. And absolutely what I was smelling with the malt bill, kind of this biscuity cracker-like quality and giving off an aroma not dissimilar to graham crackers. I could tell you that's actually how it tastes. This, while I don't think it's intentionally trying to be a s'mores beer, is one of the most spot-on s'mores tasting beers I've had. Every time I see a s'mores beer, I try one. Normally they're okay. Some I'm just flatly disappointed, but none of them have ever really captured the essence of s'mores in beer form that I've tried yet. And I've tried quite a few, which is a shame because it's one of my favorite desserts. It's the simplicity of it. This really does taste a whole heck of a lot like s'mores in beer form. And that is a very high compliment. Whether or not it was intentional or not, that's how it's coming across my palate, and it's bloody delicious. So I'm going to jump in for another sip and start to think about some critical elements here. The body is quite robust. It's medium heavy, very big medium heavy. The mouthfeel, there's definitely resistance to it, but I wouldn't call it syrupy. It's got resistance, but it's not syrupy. Agitating around the palate really doesn't add any additional thick quality. It doesn't get super silky, creamy, foamy, bubbly. It just kind of further agitates it around the palate, which is nice because then it just coats all the flavors without any other senses kind of being thrown in another direction. In terms of the finish on this beer is quite long. Each sip really just positively lingers all over the palate, and it's very intense malt bill and chocolate. There's still that lingering marshmallow as well, and that slight sweetness, but this chocolate is so big and so bold and so forward, and that's really kind of marrying with that malt bill and bringing out those kind of cracker and biscuity-like qualities that's really putting me in mind of s'mores. It's very, very, very good. Very big beer. In terms of kind of the balance of everything in this, they did say double chocolate with marshmallow, and the chocolate is very forward. And it is absolutely the dominant flavor here, but frankly, you can pick out this malt bill crystal clearly, both in aroma and in the flavor, and the same thing with the marshmallow and the lactose, because it's serving its purpose. So yes, the chocolate is very much dominant, but the balance that they struck, I think is very, very nice. Sometimes chocolate heavy milk stouts in particular can come up tasting almost like chocolate milk, kind of chocolate syrupy. This is big, bold, rich, dark chocolate, and it's very nice, and it's very chocolate dominant. So it doesn't take that astringently sweet side. It takes the more roasted path, and that intensity is marrying with this malt bill, while the sweetness is just kind of this other layer that's playing in with it. I wouldn't change a thing about the balance on this at all. I think it's struck very, very well. This is an absolutely delicious beer. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come up with my scores. When we come back, we will get to the second beer of today's review. That is the Bruery's Bakery Banana Bread Imperial Stout, brewed with walnuts and bananas, blended stout, and bourbon barrel aged. And that one clocks in at 10.2% ABV. Okay, now jumping into the second beer of today's Imperial Stout review, we've got the Bruery's Bakery Banana Bread. This is a standard Imperial Stout, not a milk. 10.2% ABV on this one. It's been bourbon barrel blended, bourbon barrel aged rather. It's a blended stout, and it's also got added walnuts and bananas. So basically the telltale ingredients for banana bread, but with a blended stout back and then bourbon barrel aged. The brewery is based out of Placentia, California, and I'm expecting this is just going to be absolutely delicious. So, starting out with label art. In terms of label art, theirs are kind of similar. They carry more or less similar themes across their labels. Kind of just little cartoonscapes that kind of have things alluding to what the beer is about. So you can see banana bread in a bakery window, and there's bananas up on the awning and all that. So it looks quite nice. And the brown and the yellow kind of color scheme on the can really gets you in the mood for banana bread. And there are a few foods in the world that are my absolute favorite, and I couldn't pick a number one, but it's probably a 2 or 3-way tie. Bananas are one of those. I absolutely love bananas. I eat anything banana flavored at all. And banana beers, there's not that many. All the ones I've had have been great. Most people know Wells Banana Bread beer, which is very, very good. So I'm curious to see what the stout masters at the brewery have done with this one, see how it compares. So without further ado, we're going to get this cracked. All right. And we're going to get this one poured right in the old stout glass here. Okay, it looks very dark. It's got a decent bit of resistance pouring out. Not super thick, but it's enough. And it's very, very effervescent. Very, very effervescent indeed. So I'm not sure how well that head is going to hold. It ought to form pretty decently. Yeah, it did. And this one is absolutely pitch black yet again, as you'd expect from an Imperial Stout. In terms of carbonation sticking to the sides, I don't really see any. It seemed to do all of its action very quickly, form up to the top. And I can tell you the aroma on this one is very pungent. I can smell it from here. I'm probably 1.5 feet, maybe a little more from this beer, and it's really coming across. So, head to settle down a bit. Let's get right up over it for a proper sniff. Oh, wow. Yeah, this one smells quite boozy. In fact, there's a little suggestion of walnuts and banana, but the dominant aroma on this is definitely that bourbon barrel. So I expect this is going to be a very interesting beer. Banana bread ingredients in a blended stout that's been bourbon barrel aged. It just sounds like a recipe for success to me. So without further ado, let's jump right in and give it a sip. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Everything that they put in this beer absolutely comes through crystal clearly. And nailing the essence of banana bread in beer form, mission accomplished. They absolutely did it. That bourbon barrel aging is just an added bonus on this beer. So, the first thing you get when you smell it is the bourbon. The first thing that you notice when you get it in the mouth is a slight sweetness, a suggestion of bananas, and a whole lot of bourbon up front. As soon as you swallow, the bourbon actually almost completely disappears. It's full force banana and walnut mixing with this stout malt bill, which naturally, obviously malt, it's going to conjure up types of bread, and it really does play up what banana bread tastes like. All of the ingredients I tasted quite clearly. It really did taste exactly like liquid banana bread, and then the bourbon just comes right back in again, and just like somebody bourbon soaked banana bread. Maybe they flambéed it, or maybe they went kind of bananas Foster in bread form. That's really what this beer is putting me in mind of, and it's absolutely delicious. The banana does come through crystal clearly, as do the walnuts, and as does that bourbon. This is truly, truly delicious, and I think they absolutely nailed what they were going for with the flavor profile of this beer. Now, excitement aside, let's jump in and dig a little deeper into what this beer is about. I'm going to go for body and mouthfeel and explore its flavor development. This one's kind of smack in the middle of the medium heavy scale. It's definitely larger in terms of breadth than a medium, but it's not a ridiculously heavy medium heavy, and it's not approaching heavy. So maybe the body doesn't feel quite as robust as one would anticipate, but for me, for a 10.2, that's a pretty high ABV, but it feels appropriate. There's definitely a good bit of resistance to the mouthfeel on this. It's not syrupy, it's not what I would call thick, it's just resistant. And when you agitate around the palate, it does get quite a bit thicker. It gets a little bit creamy, but not silky. So there is definitely an added textural element when you agitate around to let all those flavors cut around the palate. And believe me, you want to, because it's absolutely delicious. And you want to let all the flavors, really on any beer, especially when you're having for the first time, just really vigorously agitate it all around the mouth, because different parts are going to pick up different sensations all around all those taste buds and everything. Just use your whole palate when you're tasting a beer. It also helps to aerate it a bit. And in fact, sometimes at a bar, I'll steal the old wine trick. And I've done this on this channel a few times. You can vigorously kind of swish around the mouth, which I highly recommend. Another good way you can do, as wine drinkers do, where you will kind of let the mouthful of beer fall to the front of your teeth, and it's held off, and you're kind of aerating it. You make a little pocket with your tongue. Maybe some people can't do that. If you can cup your tongue and just aerate it right there, and it opens up all the flavors, and it opens up more aromas as well. So swishing really coats all the flavors all around the palate. Aerating really does kind of the same thing, but it also adds additional aromatic elements to it. So you pick up different things in the beer, and we want to fully experience this beer. You know, not just this one, but any beer. It doesn't matter. I do this at home. Even beers I've had 100 times. You know, one of my daily drinking IPAs, as ridiculous as it may seem, you know I'm a hophead, but Sierra Nevada's Torpedo Extra IPA. One of the big boy quintessential granddaddy West Coast style hophead favorites. It's really my daily drinker. And I still, to this day, I will swish it around the pellet, I will aerate it, and it's just remarkable how much that opens up all of the flavors. And in IPAs, the hops just come into full bloom. And in this, it's all of these flavors. This is all about the additives and all about this malt bill. And agitating around the pellet and aerating really goes a long way to letting you fully experience the beer. I do highly recommend it. You may look silly, let people look at you funny. It doesn't matter. You're going to be the one who wins. So they can stare at you wondering, what is this guy? Has he lost his marbles? Doesn't matter. Just do what you got to do for you to experience the beer. But in terms of body and mouthfeel, pretty much where I thought it would be. In terms of finish, the finish on this one is not as long as I anticipated. It ends up, it's not super short. It's not truncated by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not very, very long. And really, I didn't expect the banana, the malt bill, or the walnuts to kind of push it out for a long, long finish. I kind of thought maybe the bourbon barrel would, especially as intensely as it comes on, but it really doesn't. It's probably on the high end of average, but it's nothing crazy. It's not short, but it's certainly not long by any stretch of the imagination. In terms of balance of ingredients, I really like what they did with this. They used good quality bourbon barrels, that much is clear. They left the beer in there an adequate amount of time that it really imparted its presence onto the beer, which if you're going to do it, go big or go home. I will stand by that. I've had disappointing barrel-aged beers, and you know, it costs more, it takes more time, it makes everything about the process longer and more expensive, and that in turn gets turned on to the consumer. Just go big or go home. And they got it right here. It's exactly good quality and long enough to impart what they intended to do. A bourbon barrel back onto a banana bread flavored beer. And the balance of the banana and the walnut is just spectacular. They both come through absolutely clearly, just as clearly as that bourbon barrel does. It is a masterpiece in how to balance a flavored beer, especially with that many independent moving parts. I'm a massive fan of this one. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, call my scores. When we come back, we will get both beers ranked from top to bottom. Okay, now that we've gotten to enjoy both beers, we're going to get them ranked. Starting with the 903 Brewers Sasquatch, the milk stout of the bunch, Imperial, 9.8% ABV on this, brewed with double chocolate and marshmallow, and they are based in Sherman, Texas. Starting with the aroma. The aroma on this beer was certainly larger than average, but it wasn't as pungent as many Imperial Stouts, or Imperial Milk Stouts for that matter. But what you did get out of the aroma, even though it lacked a little bit of the impetus of pungency, was really, really thick and dense and decadent. You could smell that chocolate right away and a little bit of a sweetness. And indeed, I had a pretty good idea of what this was going to taste like just by the aroma. It really kind of did smell like a s'mores, and that translated into the flavor as well. Gets a 7 out of 10. For the taste on this beer was incredible. The aroma may have lacked a little pungency, but it did a really great job of translating what to expect on the flavor profile, and it was just huge. I mean, we're talking rich, dense, chocolate-forward beer here, and the lactose really played the part to kind of help accentuate and bring out the marshmallow, and then the chocolate was marrying with the malt bill, and there were indeed these graham cracker-like qualities. So even though I don't think this set out to be a s'mores beer, it was probably the closest I've tried to date, and I've tried many, many. I gave it a 10 out of 10. For the body on this beer was far larger than I anticipated for the ABV. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the mouthfeel was nice and resistant. It wasn't what I would call thick. It was a little bit less resistant, say, than the body was heavy, so there was not quite a complete parity, but it was still well above average. I gave it an 8 out of 10. For the finish on this beer was pretty nice. Stouts kind of are all over the board. No barrel aging, just some ingredients in a milk stout. This one did a pretty good job in giving you a nice long finish with tons of flavor lingering around to keep thinking about. It wasn't exactly top tier, but it didn't miss the mark by much. It gets an 8 out of 10. For the head and retention, this one did a very good job for port at home. I'm sure on a tap it would be even better. It gets an 8 out of 10. For the appearance, this was pitch black, exactly what I expect from Imperial. It gets a 10 out of 10. For the balance on this beer was exceptional. Yes, it was very chocolate dominant, but you still got the full malt bill, and the lactose married and helped bring out that marshmallow, so nothing really was vying for attention. Yes, it was chocolate dominant. Yes, it was chocolate forward, but everything played its part. I give it a perfect 10 out of 10. Feeling in the intangible. I loved this one. I really did. If they had called this a s'mores beer, I would have believed it, and I would have loved it just as well. But double chocolate marshmallow, whatever their recipe is here, they got a winner. I give it a 10 out of 10. Finally, is an example of the style. This beer did very well across the board. It lost a handful of points in a few categories, but overall, I thought it was a very, very strong, well-made Imperial Milk Stout. I only docked 1 point. It gets a 9 out of 10, which brings the total score on 903 Brewers Sasquatch to a 90 out of 100. Well above average. If anything about this beer sounded excellent to you, definitely one to keep your eye out for. It's really, really good. Moving on to beer number 2. This is the Bruery's Bakery Banana Bread Imperial Stout. 10.2% on this one. A blended stout, bourbon barrel aged and brewed with walnuts and bananas. They're based in Placentia, California. So starting with the aroma. The aroma on this beer was absolutely huge. You could smell it from many feet away. And it really did have this nice banana bread aroma about it. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the taste on this beer, really, it's exactly what I was hoping for. It was banana bread in beer form, and really the bourbon barrel aging in this one, for my money, was just an added bonus. It was almost like having bourbon-soaked banana bread. It was truly delicious. It gets a 10 out of 10. For the body on this one was reasonably robust. It was above average, but not where I expected for an Imperial Stout in this ABV range. It does get above average, though. It gets a 7 out of 10. The mouthfeel, similar story. It wasn't quite as resistant as I expected, but it did pair well with the body. They went hand in hand. Mouthfeel gets a 7 out of 10. For the finish, again, you never really know what you're going to get with a stout. This being bourbon barrel aged, I did expect that the finish would really kind of extend on the back end. I was kind of surprised that it didn't. It was really just high end of average here. It gets a 6 out of 10. For the head and retention, this one, again, did a pretty good job. Poured it home. Above average for sure. Yet again, I am positive it would do even better off of a tap. But it gets a 7 out of 10. For the appearance, just as with the first, it was pitch black. That's what you expect and want to see. Gets a 10 out of 10. For the balance, yet another one here I wouldn't have changed to think about the balance of it. Everything had its own voice, and it all just worked in harmony in the beer. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10. Feeling in the intangible. I absolutely loved it. Admittedly, I'm probably a little biased, but this is my subjective category. I love all things banana, and this was just superb. It gets a 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, this was a very well done barrel-aged Imperial Stout. It did lose a few points again in a few categories. This one a little more severe than the first, but again, overall, I thought this was a very, very excellent flavored barrel-aged Imperial, and it's well above average. It gets an 8 out of 10, which brings the total score on the Bruery's Bakery Banana Bread to an 85 out of 100. So only a 5-point spread between them, a 90 and an 85. Both of these are well above average, and if anything about what they put in to make these beers special, their individual kind of flavors and additives sounded good to you, these are two I do stand behind and absolutely would suggest. If either of them sound good to you, you're probably really going to enjoy them because they did a great job capturing the essence of what they were trying to do in both beers. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live to YouTube, you can click the notification bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.